Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I'm Tish and I be Trouble. And if you are a returner, welcome back. Today we have Mask Monday and the next chapter of our book, so stick around and find out what happens next.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the past.
Alright, Mask Monday. We have the Hyaluronic Acid Moisturizing, Nourishing and Hydrating Collagen Essence Mask. And it is from this brand here. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm quite enjoying the masks from this company. So we're going to put the mask on real quick, and then we are going to read the next chapter of our book. Alright, Edgar Suit Mask is on, and we are going to move ahead. We are on chapter 6. If you need a refresher on what happened prior to this chapter, I have a playlist in the description box. It is always there. I also have a playlist for the rest of the Beauty Ninjas. Go click on that playlist link and find out what everybody else is doing for their Mask Monday. Now, reading a book, the idea came from my Beauty Ninja sister, Sue. I was trying to find a way to do the Mask Mondays, but not try to buy things in order to like unbox them on Mask Mondays. I don't really do like empties or anything, so it was like once a month I had the ice cream box, and then I had to like fill in the rest of the blanks. So it was kind of Sue's idea for me to read a book or a poem or something, and so that is why I started doing the reading. And again, I chose the Rise of the Deva'shi, A Chronicle of Partholon by Jennifer Alice Provost. And it is one of my favorite book series. Alright, chapter 6. The next morning, as the elder sun rose and illuminated the grand steps that led to Teg Ernin, Ashera, with Aylmar to her right and a pace behind, stood on the wide platform at the top of the stairs, before the immense wooden doors that led to the interior of the palace. The hunters had assembled by rank on the queen's right, beginning with Finley, and then Anetha, while the Nuvae faced them on the left. We were lined up according to how long we had been in the Sola, making me last. I wore the red sash that marked me as the winner of the trial by combat, which singled me out despite my lowly place in the assemblage. The paved square below was as crowded as I had ever seen it, with onlookers shoving themselves into all available spaces. All of Partholon had indeed turned out for the naming ceremony, or at least all who resided within a day or two of the palace, and the feast that was to follow. As the first rays of sunlight struck the palace, Ashera looked out over her people, and by unspoken command everyone fell silent. She was wearing silver armor that was too fine to have ever seen the edge of a sword, and it shone in the early light. Her gauntlets were set with sparkling blue stones that flashed as she gestured, and the helm was shaped like a wolf's head. She led her Parthians in a prayer to the elder sun, and once the child sun began to rise, she turned to address the Nuvae. As the child sun follows his father across the sky, so the Nuvae follow the hunters. Today, the best of you is named. Aylmar called my name, and I climbed the stairs and stopped to kneel before the queen. She placed her metal-gloved hand on my head as she proclaimed, "Litera, you are hereby my huntress. Rise and join your brothers and sisters, for you are honored among them." I rose to take the place of the newly named at the first hunter's right. As I approached Aylmar, he was again beaming in pride, and I could not help but return his smile with a grin of my own. When I was in position, he looked forward and again called out to the queen, "My queen, there is another, Adher." Adher, who looked absolutely shocked, stepped forward and knelt in front of the queen. She placed her hand on his head and named him as she had named me, and I stepped back so he could take his rightful place with the hunters. The assembled people cheered, breaking the solemn atmosphere of the naming. Adher took his place beside me, then grabbed me in a massive bear hug that swept me off my feet, and I was as happy for my friend's naming as my own. Following the naming, there was a celebration in the Great Hall, and everyone who had assembled outside somehow managed to pack themselves in the much smaller area. I arrived long after the festivities had begun, as I wanted to exchange my usual leggings and tunic for something more feminine, and I entered the hall, clad in a gown of deep purple, my favorite color since childhood. It was made of the softest silk, and my skin welcomed the change from leather to fabric. The fitted bodice and sleeves were edged in silvery embroidery, and the full skirt trailed behind me as I walked. My freshly washed curls bounced across my shoulders and almost to my waist, restrained only by a simple comb. I saw that almost all of the other hunters and nuvi had also worn their best for the feast. Ashera's armor was displayed in front of her throne, and she wore a gown of pure white, her pale hair twined around her, making her look like she was shrouded in starlight. A hand shot out of the crowd, and Adher had me by the wrist. In another moment he was again hugging me. "I cannot believe we have both had such good fortune," he exclaimed. "This is a sign that we should stay together." "I fear we will not be together for long," I said as I freed myself from his grasp. "I am to stay in Tegernen, while you go to one of the borders." His brow furrowed at my words. "All new hunters are sent to the border. Aylmar himself told me that I'm to spend the next 3 winters at the eastern border. It has been that way since the last war. The Queen has decreed that I am to stay." I thought of what the first hunter had said, that there was no room for him in Tegernen, but I thought it best not to mention it to Adher. "Then we will make the most of our time together until I leave," he declared. He saw something across the room and rushed off, telling me he would be back in a moment. I saw Aaliyah and guided her to a bench, thankful for an excuse to take a break from the crowd. "I find this all very overwhelming," I said as we sat down. "I don't think I have ever seen so many people all at once. I didn't think there were this many in Partholon." "They're excited," she said. 2 hunters have not been named at once in over 100 winters, not since the last great battle was fought here. I asked her about the last war, and she explained that there was a massive attack upon the palace almost 150 years ago, which caught the hunters unawares. The only survivor of the palace contingent was Aylmar, which is how he became first hunter. I remembered the tapestry I saw my first day in Tegernen, and how he seemed uncomfortable when I asked him about it. "However," she continued with a sly smile, "they are not only discussing our good fortune at having so many strong warriors in our midst. Everyone saw the look Aylmar gave you. He was simply happy I was a good student and did well." "He looked as though he was besotted with you." I responded with a stern glance, but she was not deterred. And when Adher was named, he did not even hazard a glance in his direction. I brushed off her remarks, not being in the mood to defend someone else's facial expressions, but just as I resolved to tell her to be silent on the subject of the first hunter once and for all, I looked across the hall and saw Aylmar speaking with Herrick. He had also changed from his usual battle gear and wore a fine blue tunic, which made his dark blue eyes even more dramatic, and black pants. His chestnut hair was loose and fell in a shining wave well past his shoulder. Ever the warrior, his sword still hung at his side. As I looked at him, I thought that he was indeed handsome, and I could understand why the women at court so actively pursued him. Aaliyah followed my gaze and rolled her eyes when she saw the object of it. "Oh, not you too," she said with an exasperated tone. "What?" I asked, snapping my head around to face her. She started to point in his direction, but I grabbed her hand. "See," she said, indicating my behavior. "If he is not gazing upon you, you stare after him, and neither of you will admit it. If one of you doesn't say something soon, you'll spend eternity staring at each other. Just go talk to him." I looked toward him, and for all my supposed bravery, I could not move from the bench. "What can I possibly say to interest him?" I asked. Aaliyah's expression changed to that of a benevolent older sister, and she gently said, "It doesn't matter what you say. If you speak to him, he will listen." With those words, she smiled sweetly and practically shoved me off the bench in Aylmar's direction. As I made my way through the mass of people, I saw Herrick had walked away from him, and I hesitated for a moment. I was prepared to engage him in conversation with another present, where we could speak of court matters and nothing too indulgent, but I suddenly felt that I could not confront him on my own. If Aaliyah had not been watching me like a hawk, I would have fled the hall. Aylmar was about to walk away, but he stopped once he saw me, thus ending my planned retreat. For long moments we merely looked at each other, and then he took the last step towards me. I have never seen you in anything like this, he said, and I realized he had never seen me dressed as a lady, only as a huntress, or worse, a stable hand. You look wonderful. I could say the same of you, I replied. I found myself staring into his eyes, wondering if I could remain in them forever. When I caught myself, I quickly looked down and focused my gaze on the black buttons that ran up the front of his tunic. They fascinated me to a certain degree, for they shone as if they were cut from precious stones, and I could not imagine where a warrior would obtain such a garment. My eyes traveled to his hands, and I noticed that he was holding something. I was about to ask what it was when Adher erupted from the throng and grabbed me by the waist. "Dance with me!" he shouted, as I knocked his hands away. My actions did not deter him, and he tugged at my wrist. "Not now, Adher!" I said harshly. He looked from me to the first hunter, and from the corner of my eye I could see Aylmar glaring at him. He looked from me to Aylmar and dropped my wrist. "Very well, you've made your choice," he said coldly. He turned and shoved his way back through the crowd. I hesitantly turned back to Aylmar, but the harshness in his eyes was gone, replaced by the prideful gaze of earlier. "I think he's had too much wine," I said half-heartedly, and Aylmar nodded in agreement. "It's given him the courage to approach the most beautiful one here," he said. I felt my cheeks grow hot, and I looked at the floor. I could not even concentrate on his feet, so I focused my eyes on the person behind him. Somehow, I continued to resist the urge to walk away, and told myself I had to say something to justify why I had approached him. "I wanted to thank you," I said. "Not for that," I blushed again as I recalled his compliment, "but for your faith in me. You were right. I'm much happier here than I ever could have been in a stable." I hesitantly looked up, and his warm smile put me at ease. "You are very welcome, my lady," he said as he bowed his head to me, only to remember that he was holding something. As he fingered the black silk covering, he looked as if he wanted to hand it to me, but somewhere other than the middle of a crowded room. He turned and beckoned me to follow, and we left the bustle of the hall to emerge in the deserted courtyard. I closed my eyes and stretched my arms out to the sun, drinking in the light. "On a beautiful day like today, they cram themselves inside," I said. I spun about in the golden light, letting my skirts twirl about me in a wide circle. When I opened my eyes, Aylmar was directly in front of me, and he placed the object in my hands. "This is for you," he said. It was smooth and heavy, and for a moment I just looked at the lump of silk. He became impatient with me and unfolded the cloth, revealing a simple gold cuff set with a red stone. Underneath the stone was the sheriff's royal mark, the she-wolf. "It's called a hunter's gauntlet," he said. "It's only given to the best of the hunters. Surya was the last to earn one, and Finley before her." "Why did you not present this to me at the naming?" I asked. If I had indeed earned this, it should have been part of the ceremony, or so I felt. "Adher did not earn one. I know that you are not the type to brag, so by giving it to you privately, we can spare his pride." I looked up at him and smiled. "You are very kind, First Hunter." He returned my smile with a smirk of his own. "Do not let that get out." He took the cuff and placed it on my left wrist, as he held onto it for long moments after it was in place, tracing the outline of the stone. "This is a bloodstone, to remind us of those who have fallen before us." His eyes filled with pain, and I recalled what Aaliyah told me about the last war. "Like those you lost when you were named First Hunter?" I asked softly. He looked as if he was going to ask me how I knew, but instead he brought himself back to the present. "Even though it's called a gauntlet, I'm afraid it will offer you little protection in battle," he said as he let go of my hands. "Those of us who have them will hardly ever wear them." "I don't think I will ever want to remove it," I said, tracing the stone as he had. "You will feel differently after a demon claws at your wrist trying to take it from you." He glanced back at the doorway where he could hear the revelers. "And now I will take my leave of you." Why? I could not imagine why he was leaving, why he would have gone through the bother of bringing me this gauntlet if he meant to leave me standing here alone. "In case you were not aware, not a one for crowds and gatherings. I prefer the company of my one horse than all the citizens of Partholon all at once. He turned to leave, but stopped as I touched his arm. I have never been fond of crowds. May I accompany you? I could not believe my boldness, and my voice surprised me by not wavering as I made my request. The celebration is for you, he protested. You have earned this. I'm sure Adhair can create enough merriment for the both of us, I replied. I do not think I will be missed, and if I am, I will tell the truth that I prefer to have the sun on my face and the wind in my back than to sit in a stuffy hall. I'm only going to patrol the perimeter, he offered half-heartedly, knowing that fact would not change my mind. As I am now assigned to Tegurnon, I beg you to show me my duties. He sighed lightly, annoyed by my stubborn streak, and without another word, we made our way to the stables. We did not bother to change from our finery, which caused us to be the recipients of a few curious glances from the grooms. I followed him out of Tegurnon, our horses galloping as if we were chased across the plain below. He led me to the far side. So far we could hardly see the palace, and we stopped near a rocky outcropping to rest our horses. As we sat among the tall grass, Elmar told me that the battle depicted on the tapestry was called the Battle of Esgirth, for that was the name of the demon who led the charge that day, and it had taken place in front of these very rocks. He had only been a hunter for 10 winters and somehow become separated from the rest and ended up at the rear of the battle. He fought his way back to his commander, only to find that Esgirth had killed all of the hunters and the Nubai who had been pressed to fight that day. As Elmar approached the demon, it was snapping the neck of a Nubai named Mina, who was new to the Sola and should not have entered the fray. I was too late, even for her, he said, and I could see he still blamed himself. She was so young, far too young to be in such a battle, and never stood a chance against anything like Esgirth. But she received word that the others had fallen, and so she picked up her sword and went out to fight. He waited to break her neck until I was close enough to hear it. I felt helpless as I watched him kill her. I asked him if he felt that way when I fought against Smurthgoth, and he squeezed my hand. I had not realized he was holding it. I did, but you proved my fears were unfounded. Esgirth was maybe half as despicable as Smurthgoth, and yet you survived. When you are told that you earned your place as a huntress, neither I nor the queen say such things lightly. I asked what became of Esgirth, and his face hardened, relating that he was so enraged by Mina's death he slew Esgirth and the lesser demons in blind fury. He claimed to hardly remember it, but when Ashera went out to retrieve him, he was found atop a mound of dismembered foes, which is the scene immortalized in the tapestry. Elmar was named first hunter after that, and the next to be named was Anetha, with Finley named 6 winters later. The 3 of them established the trials as benchmarks to know when the Nubai were ready to be named, for anyone could learn the art of combat, but only a very few were qualified to fight against a demon. The naming ceremony grew from an inconsequential formality into the spectacle it was today, and as new hunters were named, the denizens of Partholon began to feel safe again. Elmar finished his tale and stretched out in the sun, and as he leaned back on his hands, I thought he looked more relaxed than I had ever seen him. You have made yourself suffer all these years from that one battle? I asked. Is this why all of Tegurnon discusses how somber you are, and why you seem to enjoy being miserable? He opened his eyes, confused and angry at my question. I moved closer and knelt in front of him, so he could not avoid me. You have never spoken of this with anyone, have you? I gently asked him. No, he answered, as he glared at me, not understanding what I hoped to accomplish with my question. I wish you had spoken of it sooner, I said quietly, for you look as if a great burden has been lifted from your shoulders. His face softened at my words, and his shoulders slumped from weariness or sadness. I could not tell. He covered his face with his hands and let his hair fall forward, and the harshness was gone from his voice when he spoke again. I am not like you, he said slowly. I do not have anyone like Aaliyah to confide in. In that instant, I saw he carried the weight of many such events on his shoulders, and he was not sullen or melancholy, but he was trying to be strong and take these burdens solely as his own, to spare others the pain. I thought that he was the kindest, most noble man I had ever encountered, and I only wanted to ease his suffering. I took Aylmar's hands from his face and gently tucked some of his hair behind his ear, revealing his eyes. The softness of it surprised me, and for a moment I ran my fingers through the long strands, straightening them against his shoulder. "You are wrong again," I said as I stroked his hair. "You have me." So, that is the end of chapter 6. Next will be chapter 7, which will be next Monday. That was a short chapter. Thank goodness, because my voice was getting a little bit tired. The mask felt very nice. All right. Again, there is a playlist for the Beauty Ninjas below. You can go check out what they're doing for their Mask Mondays. There is also a playlist for the previous chapters of the book. I have, I hope, arranged it so that the oldest or the first chapter plays first and it goes in chronological order as opposed to starting off with the very last chapter I read and going backwards, because why would you want to listen to the book backwards? All right. Anyways, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All that good stuff is below. I hope every single one of you has an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the